Well, after 129 days of public and private hearings and testimony from 82 witnesses, the long-awaited Royal Commission report into the Lawyer X scandal has finally been released today to the public. The report has slammed the actions of Victoria Police, saying it was inexcusable to use underworld barrister Nicola Gobbo as a police informer. Now, Nicola Gobbo could face criminal charges for her role as a police informant in Melbourne's gangland war. Walkley award-winning journalist and columnist for the Herald son Patrick Carlyon has been a key player in exposing the truth on this Lawyer X scandal. He joins me now from Melbourne. Patrick, thank you for your time. You were right there in the box seat with your colleague from the outset. 111 recommendations today. Any that stand out particularly to you?
Oh, look, Commissioner McMurdo basically has ordered that a special investigator should be appointed to look at the criminality or otherwise of the many dozens, potentially, of police officers and Nicola Gobbo's conduct. Now, it is a watershed moment in what's really been a very long-running saga. My colleague Anthony Dowsley first exposed this story back in 2014. The police themselves privately were aware that they had massive legal issues with some of their convictions back in 2012, certainly, and probably well before. So it's a watershed day in what has really become the never-ending saga, Peter.
I think I've got a quote here on camera from Victoria's Attorney-General Jill Hennessy. She responded to the findings of this report a little earlier today. Let's have a listen.
There is a lot of work to do to make sure that we ensure that this never happens again and that we rise to the important challenges of Commissioner McMurdo's recommendations. We will immediately begin to implement every recommendation in the final report. And by accepting and agreeing to implement all of the Commission's recommendations, the government is committed to rebuilding the community's confidence in a fair and robust justice system that we all can trust.
Yeah, I have to find it extraordinary when you look at how the Brereton report was handled, and I have got some issues with that, but the appointment of a special investigator was declared very early on by the government, and there's a whole process that sits outside the Defence Force to ensure that there's, appropriate distance. It doesn't look like that's on the cards yet in Victoria. There needs to be a special investigator, as McMurdo says, and it needs to sit outside the justice system or the Justice Department and the police force in Victoria because, honestly, Patrick, there's not just one or two rogue officers here. It goes all the way to the very top echelons of the commissioner level, doesn't it?
Oh, look, you have former Chief Commissioner Simon Overland, who's sort of in the frame here. You have former Chief Commissioner Graham Ashton. You have a run of assistant commissioners, and you have a lot of very senior officers who have sort of since been promoted and are way up the chain now. And it's something, you make the point, you need an external, independent sort of arbiter to sort of look at these things because the police can't investigate the police. And so this basically does draw out the process for years on end from here, but it's obviously a necessary step. As the now Chief Commissioner said today, police have to build the trust. They have to have the trust of the Victorian people and the public, and the only way to do that is to have this independent sort of umpire, if you like, coming in and actually assessing the nitty-gritty detail, which is terribly complicated and goes over many, many years, as you pointed out. So it's going to be a long process, but it's obviously a necessary one.
Yeah, I need to remind people too, of course, that the Premier, the Victorian government, under the Premier, went all the way to the highest court in the land to prevent your paper's publication of the details in relation to Lawyer X. We're told about 800-odd criminals, 850-odd criminals, could well be released from jail if they are able to take through a court process their original convictions and declare them null and void. That's got to be a concern.
Look, if you look at the fact, I think there's more than 1,000, Peter, and I think there's probably 70 still in jail as we speak. But if you take the case of Tony Mockbell, obviously very high profile, it was something that fascinated the public as part of the gangland war. He was convicted in 2012 of various high-level drug charges. Now, before he was sentenced that same year, Victoria Police commissioned a report, and in that report it said this conviction may be unsafe. So Victoria Police was aware of the issues back in 2012. Now, to this day, Tony Mockbell is still seeking the classified documentation that would facilitate or furnish certainly an appeal bid. And Victoria Police has sat on that for 8 years. And that's just one example, a very high-profile example of how the police have dragged their feet all the way through, kicking and screaming. This report today basically reinforces I think 2 Supreme Court trials, the High Court of Australia and various other reviews that have gone on for almost a decade.
Well, I hope you stay across it, Patrick Carlyon. My little insight to how justice, quote-unquote, operates in Victoria out of the Coate inquiry, the more sunlight, the better.
That's right.